each morning, the boys and I have a pledge that we take. And one of the lines in the pledge is, today I will tell the truth even when it's not easy. And I know that a lot of times we tend to think of, knee-jerk reactions to think that that's all about just telling the truth, about not telling a lie. And yes, that is true. But the other part of it is that my hope is that my boys will grow up to be men of integrity, beyond just not telling a lie. I hope that I grow up to be a man of integrity. That's the standard that I set for myself. And I think that all of us as parents, that is our hope, that whether we have sons or daughters, doesn't matter. I think that we want to raise them to be men and women of integrity, and that is the standard that we set for ourselves, okay? But I think that it goes beyond. A lot of times we think of that just as telling the truth. That's the only thing that we focus on. But, over the last few weeks, as we have been studying Elisha, I've caught myself, and I keep going back, okay, and reading the story of Elisha, from 1 Kings 19:19, when he first comes onto the scene, until I get to 2 Kings 13:25, where he's gone, okay, when it says that he died, and, after he had raised the man. And so I've been reading it, and one of the things that has really jumped out to me is there's kind of been a word that has just resonated in my head throughout every bit of it, and that is integrity. I see Elisha as a man of integrity. And that's not to say that other people in the Bible aren't, okay? But I think that he is a walking, talking example of what utmost integrity is. And I want to give you a little bit of a definition, because when we say integrity, I think sometimes we've got different ideas and thoughts of what it is. If you look integrity up in the dictionary, here's what it will tell you. That it's got three different definitions. A firm adherence to a code of especially moral or artistic values. Incorruptibility is a synonym there. An unimpaired condition. Soundness. Number 3, the quality or state of being complete or undivided. I really liked that one, which is completeness. But to me, that is, as I read his story, that is Elisha. Okay, and like I said, it's, living a life of integrity is more than just, not telling lies or doing what you said you're going to do, or being a man or a woman of your word. It goes beyond that, because I think, to me, integrity is holding to your convictions, okay? It's about not compromising. It is about being willing and able to take a stand even on the hard things. It is telling the truth and living the truth even when it is not the easy thing to do. And that's why I think that Elisha is a walking, talking example. And so we're going to look at some events from his life. One of the things I love about doing these is character studies. Is the fact that we kind of take a big picture view of these individuals. And so we're going to do that and look at a few different events in his life and what we can learn from them, but also how we can apply them to our lives. The first one, honestly, happened on day one of his prophetic ministry. We know, we talked here about how Elisha was following Elijah. They went across the Jordan River, and it was just Elijah and Elisha that went. They get on the other side, and while they are there, then we know that Elijah was taken to heaven in a whirlwind on a chariot of fire. And so when that has happened, then his cloak falls to the ground. Elisha then does what? He picks up the cloak. He then takes it. We know that he rolls it up. He walks back to the Jordan River. He touches the Jordan River, and it parts to the right and the left, just as it did when Elijah had done it just a little bit before. And then he walked back across the Jordan River on dry land. And so he gets back there. He gets back on that side. And what's interesting is that there is this group of probably 50 or more of the company of prophets that are there, and they've seen this. They may have seen Elijah go up. We kind of think that maybe they did. Don't know that they went that far. And so when Elisha comes back, now you and I read that story, and what do we know? We know, oh, well, Elijah's gone, ain't never coming back, and Elisha has now his successor. That's what we know. That's what Elisha knew. The guys on the other side weren't completely committed to that. Because what we find is that they go to Elisha and they're like, hey, we need to go search for Elijah. Which I'm like, okay, so a whirlwind and a chariot of fire picks him up and then God's just going to drop him off on a mountain somewhere else? I don't think so. And secondly, how are these 50 guys going to go out and find him in all of this landscape? Okay? But it's the fact that they were not willing and they weren't ready yet to give Elisha their full respect as Elijah's successor. Now, at first, Elisha says, no, you don't need to do that. They relent. They keep after him. And so he relents and tells them, okay, go look. And what's interesting, I was reading a commentary, and there was a commentary said that was an example of Elisha giving in to peer pressure. I don't necessarily think so. I really think it was the wise decision. And here's why. What did Elisha know? He knew that Elijah was gone. Elisha knew that he was Elijah's successor, that he was the one that God had chosen to follow him. He knew that. And I think that what it is he knew who he was, he knew what he was, he knew what God had called him to. But he wasn't going to try and make a bigger deal out of this with the company of prophets. I mean, he could have argued with them. He could have said, no, you're not allowed to. He could have tried to perform some miracle to show him that he was the guy, but he didn't do it because he knew what he knew. And as far as them, what was going to happen was they were going to have to either come to that conclusion or not, but whether they were willing to completely accept Elisha's position as a leader was between them and God. Because God had chosen Elisha. If they chose not to, that wasn't Elisha's deal to worry about. That was between them and God. And I think that this is sometimes where this is something that we need to learn. Because we need to know who we are in Jesus. And I think a lot of times we spend a lot of our effort trying to convince people who we are in Jesus, don't we? I mean, I have no problem if you have got a cross or you have an ichthus sticker on your business card or your business billboard, that's great. Okay? I have no problem with that. But have you ever noticed when you see those sometimes, it seems like they're trying to convince you just a little bit too much. Okay? I mean, like I said, I have nothing against it, but I think that so many times it seems like it's put on there to try and convince you. And my thing is, shouldn't our speech, shouldn't our actions, shouldn't our compassion, our forgiveness, our mercy, the way we walk, talk, breathe, and live, shouldn't that be witness enough of who we are? See, I think that sometimes where we get in is we want to prove so much who we are, where if we would trust in who we are in Jesus, number one, it would eliminate so much stress from our lives. But I think also we would be much more effective in witnessing. Here's the deal. We all have different gifts. We all have different talents. We all have different abilities. We all have different personalities. We all have different ministries. That's the way God made us. He didn't make us to all do the same thing in the same way at the same time. He made us all different. But we need to be willing to trust in that, in who we are, in what we are, in the way that God made us, and the way that God has called us to. Trust in that and worry about serving Him. Elisha was not concerned about what these 50 or however many guys thought of him. That wasn't his concern. What was his concern? God chose me. I'm going to do what God told me to do. I am going to serve God. I am going to please God. And what's funny is that he sends these guys off, so they take off and they go look for Elijah, and I don't know how long they looked, but then they come back, and you know what Elisha got to tell them? Yeah, I didn't do any good, did it? In other words, I told you so. I told you didn't need to go look for him, didn't I? So maybe we get to say, I told you so. Now, sometimes I know it's hard to. We want to defend ourselves when people say things about us, when people say things to us. But I do want to tell you this. Integrity, in the end, always wins. But it's also got to be something that is consistent. It can't be something that you turn on and off. You can't try to be a man or a woman of integrity over here in this part of your life, and then you are just, over here. Okay? So you got to be, it's consistency. You have to be. That's really what integrity is all about. And it goes back to the description here that we had of completeness. It's a quality or state of mind of being undivided. We are divided when we are one way at home, we're another way at work. We're one way at school, but we are a different way on, out in the, not the workforce, but out when we're out playing or hanging out with our friends. We're a different person on Sunday morning than we are on Monday morning or Saturday night compared to Sunday morning. That's not integrity. And that will not win out in the end. And you will find yourself doing a whole lot of explaining, and that's when we get called all kinds of dirty names like hypocrite. But I have said it 100 times, and I will say it thousands more. If your beliefs or your convictions do not control your actions, if they don't drive your decisions, can you really call them convictions? I mean, I'm saying if your convictions don't drive your decisions, then they're just suggestions. I mean, they really are. That's all they are when you compromise on them, okay? And so we need to be consistent. And this is something that we see. There's a great account of this in 2 Kings 3. And this is kind of earlier on in Elisha's ministry, but quick history. Before Elijah left, okay, Elijah and Elisha are together, and King Ahab, who was the king of the northern tribe of Israel, dies, okay? Now, his son, Ahaziah, becomes king at that point, but King Ahaziah is not any better than his dad, okay? And so he ends up falling through the roof, which this is the reason I don't go up in the attic. But he falls through the roof, and he dies as well. Okay? And so he ends up, but he doesn't have any sons. So he doesn't have a son. So then Joram, which is also, you'll see him in there in the Bible, he'll be called Jehoram. Same way, Jehoram. But he then is the other son of King Ahab, so he becomes the king. Okay? So during this time, though, there are the Moabites, the king of Moab, who basically was a slave, had to provide rams and sheep to Israel. They revolt. And so King Jehoram, he ends up he decides that he needs to do something about it. So he goes to the king of Judah, which is now King Jehoshaphat, okay? And he says, well, you go with me. You got to help me. You got to help me. We've got to deal with this issue. So Jehoshaphat says that he will. And by the way, that's a hard one because it's Jehoshaphat. So I sound like I have like a speech out of it. It's like Jehoshaphat is what I feel. But I'm just telling you. So if I sound, that's why. So he goes to him and Jehoshaphat says, yes, I will. And now you guys are going to be focused on me when I say Jehoshaphat, aren't you? Every time. Everybody's going, whoop, there it was again. So they go, though, and he says, yes, I will help him. And so they put together a plan that they are going to take a long trip which goes through the desert of Edom. While they're there, then they get the king of Edom to join them as well. So these three kings go, and they are about ready to wage war. It takes them 7 days to get around there. And so when they do, they discover that tomorrow is battle day and we ain't got any water. All of a sudden, they've used all of their water in this 7 days. So they have no water for the horses. They have no water for the men either, which is not the way that you then launch a battle. Now, King Jehoram, he immediately blames God for this, even though he never consulted God. But in 2 Kings 3, it starts in like verse 11 here is where we pick up. So King Jehoram, he's like, he goes, well, God brought us out here to die, basically. And so Jehoshaphat says, is there no prophet of the Lord here that we may inquire of the Lord through him? And I don't know why Elisha was there, honestly, because, King Jehoram had never consulted him. So it wasn't like he had asked him to come along, but he was there. And so one of the attendants of King Jehoram, he says, well, there is, Elisha is here. And so these three kings, they go to Elisha and to ask him to inquire of the Lord on their behalf. And here's where I love this, because sometimes integrity is about being willing to take a stand and to say what you feel you're led to say. In verse 13, Elisha said to the king of Israel, so this is to King Jehoram, he says, what do we have to do with each other? I love that statement. He says, go to the prophets of your father and the prophets of your mother, which that would be King Ahab and Jezebel, okay, who worshiped idols. And so what he's saying is, hey, whoa, hold on. You don't come to me in the first place. So why are you coming now? Go to the gods of your dad. Go to the gods of your mother. You brought them all in. What do you and I have to do with each other? You've been worshiping all these others instead. So the king of Israel says, no, because it was, I love this, it was the Lord who called us three kings together to hand us over to Moab. Okay, well, there wasn't a whole lot of praying to God that happened before this, so that's not true. But we find then that Elisha, and listen to what he says, because yes, he is a prophet, and yes, he is respected, but at the same time, this is the type of thing that loses you your head, okay? Elisha says, as surely as the Lord Almighty lives whom I serve, if I did not have respect for the presence of Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, I would not look at you or even notice you. You want nothing to do with me? I don't have anything to do with you. I mean, and like I said, here is Elisha, and he's speaking his convictions. He says, I serve God. I don't serve you. I'm not trying to curry favor with you. I'm not trying to impress you with what I know. I'm not going to say what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the way things are, and you've had nothing to do with me. I think that it is very interesting. You see on the front of your bulletin, one of the favorite phrases, I think, of Elisha that we see all throughout is, the Lord said. The Lord has said. Elisha spoke for the Lord. He didn't put his own personality and his own opinions into it. He said what God told him to say. And I was thinking of this at the same time. I think Proverbs 3:34, we read in James, and then again Peter wrote about it. They kind of paraphrase this. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. King Jehoram was proud in everything that he did. And as a result, God opposed him. Now, I will tell you this, that God performed an amazing miracle, and I would challenge you to go back and read it. We're not going to talk about it, but it was really cool. He provided water for the kings, and the kings ended up then defeating the Moabites. But I think that, time and time again, we see this to where, Elisha begins so many times with that phrase of, this is what the Lord says. And I think this is where this applies to you and me. I know we can't see the future, and I know we don't know what tomorrow is gonna hold, but we need to stop compromising in our convictions. Okay, and that's really what Elisha did. Elisha did not compromise in his convictions. He knew what he believed. He was solid in his, and here's what I mean. I A few years ago, I went and, you know, outside Walmart, they have those little kiddie pools. They're set little plastic ones. Okay, so the boys were wanting one, so I go to pick one up, and so the dogs could play in it. And so you go in and you pay for it at the register, and then you go out and you load it up and you stick it in the back of the truck and you go home. And I get home and I realize that I actually got two. Okay, so next day, I was like, I'm not loading this sucker back up. So next day, I just went back and I bought a pool and never picked one up. Okay, so I'd paid for both of them. And I know you're thinking, Jeff, that's like $15. Don't tell us how. Maybe a month ago, I'm walking through, same Walmart. I spend too much time there, but I'm walking through the same Walmart, and I see money, cash, laying on the floor. Okay, 20s, 10, 5, and a couple of ones. $79 to be exact. Is just sitting there on the floor in cash with a receipt. Somebody had dropped it. Okay, so I picked it up and I put it in the tray. See, everybody's looking like, what are you talking about? I went and tried to find a manager. I took it. I didn't stick it in a pocket. I carried it. I'm kind of like holding it out here so everybody sees it. But which was a chore in itself, trying to find a manager to give it to. But I finally did. I got it to somebody. My point is that I never thought about keeping it. I never did. Okay, it was not mine, so therefore it was not mine to keep. And I think the thing is that sometimes this is where, when we get into to compromising our convictions, is that we start to grade on a curve. Okay, and I'm just telling you this: when it comes to your convictions, if you grade on the curve, it's going to get you in trouble every single time. It will. I mean, we say that thou shalt not lie unless it's just a little teeny tiny white lie. But the question is, at what point does a lie quit becoming a tiny white lie and turn into something else? You don't steal unless it's just something really, really small, or it's absolutely necessary. But here's the deal. Can you, when it comes to a lie, when it comes to taking something, can you right now objectively tell me at what point a lie becomes too big to tell? Can you tell me right now objectively how much money is too little to worry about turning it in, or how much is too much that you got to keep it? See, you can't, because it's all about emotion. It's all about the moment. It all becomes about grading on the curve. And that's the problem. That's when we get in trouble. When we compromise on our convictions, then they become nothing more than simply suggestions. And we don't see that in Elisha at all. We see somebody who was absolutely consistent in his convictions. He wasn't going to say, well, in this case, I don't want to irritate the king, so I'm going to say something else. Okay? It doesn't happen. And I would challenge you, go through and read those passages. Read the story of Elisha. And I would challenge you to find a time when he compromised in his convictions or in his morals. You won't. You will not find one. But it's a really great read too. So I would challenge you to go through and read it and spend some time. And what you will find is, I think that you'll start to see him a little bit different. When you start to read his account with the word integrity on your brain, it changes the way you look at a lot of this stuff. And you begin to see that integrity is more than just not telling a lie. It's more than just not stealing something. It's more than just, being a man or a woman of your word. It is about the way that we live in everything. And that is not compromising on our convictions. Because any baseball players in here? Anybody ever played baseball? Anybody? Okay. I don't have them. Now, you can't do it at our fields out here, but if anybody ever remembers, what you would always do is, when you'd step up to the plate, first thing you do is you run your feet across what? The line. Because you want to try and blur that line of where the batter's box is. Okay? And that's exactly what happens. Every time that we compromise our convictions, we blur that line a little bit, and a little bit, until one day we don't know where the line is or even where it used to be. The commitment we have got to make if we want to be men and women of integrity is that we are not going to compromise in our convictions. And here's the beauty of it, okay? There's a couple of things that happen. When you make the decision to not compromise in your convictions, do you realize how many of your the decisions that we struggle with, do you realize how many of them are already made for you? They really are. Because you're like, you've already made this decision this situation, I'm not going to do that. Okay, this is out of bounds. This is what I'm not going to do. And so all of a sudden, in the heat of the moment, when you're thinking, no, that's just out of bounds. I don't do that. I don't go there. That's not going to happen. You don't even have, so many of our difficult decisions are made for us because we've already decided ahead of time, no, I'm not compromising on this. This is the way it is. That doesn't mean we have to be nasty. Doesn't mean we have to be rude. Doesn't have to be all this stuff. Because as soon as I say that you need to be, don't compromise on your convictions, and somebody's going to say, okay, so I got to tell so-and-so that they're a such and such, or that they need to quit doing. No, that's not what I said. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about the way you live. I'm talking about the way you talk, the way that you are at work. I'm talking about you making a decision that if your convictions say, I am not going to steal, then I don't care if it is when you go to the convenience store and you should be getting 30 cents back and you get 60 cents back, that you don't say, whoops, you gave me too much change. And I know you think, hey, well, yeah, of course, you're only talking about 30 cents. Yes, you are. But you would be amazed if you will do it. Do you know how many people would go, oh, wow, thank you for being honest? Over 30 cents. Over $2. Okay, but when it becomes a habit, now in those things, then it becomes your habit all the way throughout. And so now you have made the decision that I am not going to compromise my convictions. Makes so many of your decisions for you. Here's the other thing it does. It's appealing. I will say this, that when it comes to when you meet people that have the same morals as you, that have the same standards as you, integrity is so appealing to them. They will be drawn to you. Now, when you meet people that don't have the same morals and don't have the same beliefs or convictions as you, integrity is still appealing. And those people will be drawn to you. We see this here is Elisha, who never said what people wanted to hear, yet he had kings of foreign lands. He had commanders of foreign lands coming to him and asking for his guidance, for his wisdom, for his direction. Not because he was going to tell them what they wanted to hear, but because he was going to tell them the truth. Unvarnished truth. And I will say this, that when it comes to issues of integrity, and I know we always like, well, nobody will want to talk to me. No, you'll be amazed if you will stand for the truth and not compromise on what you believe, on why you believe. It's another reason that it's very important to know what you believe and to know why you believe it. But when you will take those stands, once again, not in an ugly, nasty way, but simply, I had many years ago, I had a conversation with a young lady that her mother had died suddenly. There was really nothing that led anybody to believe that she had become a Christian before she died. And I talked to this young lady, and she had actually been somewhere and in town at a Christian church, and they were praying for her mom after her mom had died. And I remember she came to me, and the easy thing would have been to say, yes, I'll pray for your mom. But I had to sit here and look at this lady. Look her right in the face and say, I don't know. but there's nothing that we can do for your mother now. If, and I believe with all my heart, boy, it can happen in that moment. I mean, she died suddenly. She just fell over dead. And there is nothing that says that she couldn't in that moment, that she could not make that decision. We serve a God of grace, and it doesn't take any special chant or special this or special that. If we believe in our heart, then at that moment I believe that He will forgive us. That's the God we serve. But the thing is that if she didn't make that decision, then I'm sorry, I can't change my convictions. The fact that we all spend eternity somewhere. My convictions are that 2 seconds after we die, our eternal fate is sealed. I can't change that conviction. And I remember sitting there and telling that to this young girl. And she cried, and I knew that it was going to hurt. And we developed an amazing relationship and friendship after that she kept coming back to me about all kinds of things because she knew that I would tell her what the Bible said and I would tell her the truth, even if it was painful. See, that's what integrity is. And that's what we're called to do. There's a reason the Bible says to speak the truth in love. It can be done that way without us compromising our convictions. So I'm just going to ask, we have our time of decision. That is really, I think, something that you and I have got to decide, okay? We can spend all of this time about, well, where's the line, or what are we going to do, or this and that. My question, plain and simple, is, do you compromise in your convictions? Have you done it? Do you find yourself always trying to rationalize or, well, maybe this would be, but that's not, or in this situation? And I'm just telling you, that's not what God has called us to. He has called us to be solid in our convictions. He's called us to be men and women of integrity. And that's the first place it starts, is making the decision that, you know what, today I'm going to tell the truth even when it's not easy. Today I'm going to live the truth even when it is not easy. I want people to look at me and to know that I am living a life of integrity in everything that I do. I'm going to ask you.